Hi, I'm Hal Roberts. This is Bridge City News. Here's some of the top stories we've been following. Alberta Seniors and Housing Minister Josephine Pon made a stop in Taber as the province kicked off Seniors Week. We caught up with Freedom Marcher James Topp, who's made his way to Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario, as he continues to fight federal government COVID-19 mandates. And Prime Minister Justin Trudeau joined a somber march in London on the one-year anniversary of a Muslim family being killed by a truck in what police called a targeted racist attack.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. Lethbridge East MLA and UCP caucus chair Nathan Neudorf announced on Monday that he will not be seeking the party's leadership. So far, 4 candidates have put their names forward to become the next premier and party leader. They are former UCP Finance Minister Travis Taves, former leaders of the Alberta Wildrose Party, Brian Jean and Daniel Smith, and independent MLA Todd Loewen. Premier Jason Kenney says he will remain on as party leader until a new leader is chosen. The next provincial election is coming up in the spring of 2023. Seniors are being honored across Alberta this week. Seniors Week highlights the amazing work from our more mature generation and celebrates their accomplishments. As BCN's Micah Quinn explains now, the Minister of Seniors and Housing, Josephine Pon, was in Taber on Monday to kick off the very special activities.
Indigenous dancing and music marked the start of Seniors Week here in Alberta. The Alberta Minister of Seniors and Housing, Josephine Pon, and Grant Hunter, the MLA for Taber-Warner, were present during the event, taking in the music and chatting with seniors.
Mental health is a major issue, a concern for our government, for lots of Albertans that are struggling with mental health. Senior citizens have been stuck at home. They're the most vulnerable because of COVID. And so this is important because it allows people to come out and to engage with each other and to smile and have some fun and watch some great dancing, as you saw earlier.
Today's festivities did not include an announcement for additional funding for affordable seniors housing, but Minister Pon says the Alberta government has plans to implement funding soon.
We just launched Affordable Housing 10-year strategy, which is to address the issue we have, not just for seniors, for Albertans as well. The affordability housing, people want to have a roof under their head, and 10 years affordable housing is the strategy that we are planning to increase by 25,000 households and in total of 82,000 households in 10 years.
The province predicts that by 2035, there will be over 1 million seniors in Alberta. Seniors Week will run until June 12th, and there will be other events taking place throughout Alberta to celebrate seniors as well. For Bridge City News, I'm Micah Quinn.
The province says it is putting more pressure on the federal government to increase support for policing in Coaldale. Officials say Coaldale, located just outside of Lethbridge, has to pay 100% of the costs for RCMP policing. In a release, the province says the town of Coaldale has lobbied Ottawa to fund its policing costs at the same rate it funds other small towns. Government officials say Ottawa should be paying 30%, but because of its refusal to do so, taxpayers in Coaldale have been saddled with $4 million in extra costs. Officials say the province sent a letter to the Federal Minister of Public Safety supporting Coaldale, and now further action is needed. Police in Claresholm responded to a number of complaints involving a large group of youth who were bullying and chasing a 13-year-old girl in the town of Nanton. The investigation revealed that there was a long history of poor behavior between these youth and the victim, some of which had a criminal element. Last Friday, 6 of those youth were arrested and charged. The teenagers are between 14 and 15 years of age. They face a number of criminal charges, including intimidation, mischief, and uttering threats. All 6 were released from custody and will appear in provincial court on July the 15th. The opposition NDP is calling on the UCP government to extend the provincial gas tax holiday till October the 1st and to conduct an audit to ensure the savings are being passed on to Alberta drivers.
Gas prices have risen 8.5 cents per litre in the last week. It's now around $1.79 per litre, and many Albertans are struggling to fill up just to get to work. Energy analysts predict gas prices are going to increase even further over the summer, putting more pressure on Alberta families at a time when they can least afford it. They need help. They need certainty. Inflation is at a 30-year high. More Albertans are struggling to pay down their debts, and surveys show that Alberta families feel financially stressed more now than at any point during the pandemic.
Seeding delays across much of the prairies are raising concerns about lower crop yields in a year when farmers are under more pressure to deliver a strong harvest. The stakes are pretty high in the agriculture industry, with the war in Ukraine spurring global food security fears and driving prices for commodities such as wheat and canola sky high. The growing season, however, is off to a pretty rocky start. According to a report by Raymond James Financial, farmers in both Canada and the United States got off to their slowest start in more than 10 years this year due to early season rain, snow, and flooding. The Alberta government is warning that the wildfire risk in the province's north is climbing, and fire advisories have been issued for both the Slave Lake and high-level forest areas. The province says those areas are experiencing warm, dry weather, which is expected to continue for the next several days. A blaze 30 kilometers west of Chippewa Lakes was spotted over the weekend, which has been slowed by air tankers, but was still 270 hectares in size and is classified as out of control. The province has begun enforcing a pass for visitors in the popular Kananaskis Country Mountain Parks west of Calgary. If people do not have a daily or season pass, they will face a $150 fine. The UCP government brought in the policy to help pay for the cost of maintaining the area. Opposition NDP leader Rachel Notley says it is not fair for families and people with low incomes. She says if the NDP wins the next provincial election of 2023, it will scrap the policy. Thanks to a $13,000 grant through a community foundation group, the town of Raymond will soon have a fully functioning food storage shed for people to come and grab what they need. As BCN's Angela Stewart explains now, the help is so needed, especially at a time when inflation is through the roof.
It's barrier-free, which means you don't have to prove need in order to use it. The food's just there.
For the last 2 years, the Free Pantry Society of Raymond has been distributing free food and hygiene items for residents in the town by using these community drop boxes.
It limits us to just dry goods or canned goods, and depending on the time of the year, we can't put canned or wet goods in our outdoor boxes.
Through the inspiration of Reuben's Veggies in Lethbridge, Stuart Foss, the president of the society, says they began looking into the idea of a food storage shed, which would allow them to distribute fresh produce and other items.
It also helps us solve another problem, which is that we need storage for all of the food that we collect.
And thanks to the Community Foundation of Lethbridge, that idea is now becoming a reality.
One of their community priorities grants, and we were successful in getting it.
The town currently does not have a food bank, so those who are needing assistance are having to make trips to Lethbridge.
Which works really good for people who maybe have a surprise one month. I think we all kind of know the inflation issues.
According to Food Banks Canada, in 2021, there were over 1 million visits to food banks across Canada, and over 50% of users are on social assistance.
When your utility bills double or the cost of food increases, you have to make hard decisions about where you're going to skip a payment. And so the free pantries, the design of them is to eliminate that hard decision for those people.
Well, currently where I'm standing, this is where the storage shed will be. It will expand about 300 square feet. Foss also tells me they have until the end of spring of 2023 to complete construction, but the hope is to have it completely built by the end of the summer. For Bridge City News, I'm Angela Stewart.
Freshly cooked lobster will be on the menu this Saturday, June the 11th. That is the official kickoff to Lobsterfest, which is an event raising money for the Lethbridge Legion General Stewart Branch, the Royal Canadian Air Force Association 702 Wing, and the 11th Squadron Royal Canadian Air Cadets, along with a few other organizations. Wayne King, the past president of the 702 Wing, says this is a vital event to raise funds for.
Some of the funds will go to provide the ongoing administrative costs of both the 702 Wing and the Legion, but also will contribute to the continuation of the cadet program in the city. In addition to that, we do support other local youth activities and Salvation Army and other community groups as well.
There's some good news. King says fortunately tickets are completely sold out for Lobsterfest. A trial is set to begin in the tax evasion case of former Conservative MP Rob Anders. Court documents show that tax authorities allege Anders failed to report more than $750,000 in net income over 5 years. Anders was elected as a Reform MP in 1997 and went on to represent his Calgary riding until 2015. He has pleaded not guilty to all of the charges. Newly re-elected Ontario Premier Doug Ford offered a message of unity to supporters new and old, along with those who did not support him at all this election. Ford says his team has a big agenda to fulfill to keep every promise he made during his campaign stops.
I inherited a party, and this party is very different now. We've kept our promises right along the way over the last 4 years, even through challenging times of the pandemic. We're going to make sure we keep our promises going forward. And our promise is very clear. We're building that 413. We're building the Bradford bypass. We're building highways right across this entire province. We have 50 hospital projects to a tune of $40 billion that we're going to invest in. We're investing in new schools. We're going out there and spending $14 billion on building new schools. We're focusing on infrastructure to a tune of $158 billion. We're building Ontario, and we're bringing more companies in here every single day. And I just look forward to continue moving forward.
Freedom Marcher James Topp continued his cross-country journey of walking across Canada protesting the COVID-19 mandates. Topp, who is serving in the Canadian Armed Forces, says he's in the process of being released from the military as he doesn't believe in the mandates. He was also charged for speaking out against the restrictions while he was in uniform. We caught up with Mr. Topp, who's in Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario, and he says there have been some hurdles along the way which haven't made this journey easy.
The challenges of bringing a team together, holding it together, getting everything in place as far as logistics and administrative has been an enormous challenge. We are marching typically for 5 days with a day off, trying to get our messages out to members of parliament, trying to schedule interviews, making sure that we have a place to put our heads down, making sure we have enough to eat. So it's all been a challenge, but I have to say that the team has pulled together quite nicely.
Topp says the support he's received from everyone has been incredible so far. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau joined a march in London, Ontario during an emotional tribute marking the one-year anniversary of a deadly attack on a Muslim family. He said the federal government has taken action to address hate and racism in Canada, but more work needs to be done.
How could this happen in Canada? And racialized Canadians, Muslim Canadians, Canadians of diverse intersectionalities and backgrounds nodded and said, yeah, unfortunately, this can happen in Canada.
Last year, I would never be able to understand how all it took was one act of hatred to change my entire life. A life where I now have a gaping wound left in my heart, where my dear cousin Yumna, her grandmother Talat, Auntie Madiha, and Uncle Salman had once been.
The 4 members of the Afzal family were killed when a truck struck them in what police describe as a crime motivated by anti-Muslim hate. A 21-year-old man faces first-degree murder and terrorism charges. His trial is expected to begin next year. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson has survived a no-confidence vote. Party official Graham Brady says he had received enough letters from lawmakers demanding a vote on Johnson's leadership to trigger one. In the end, 211 Conservative Party lawmakers voted in favor of Johnson, while 148 voted against him. Johnson's leadership has been racked by controversies, including the Partygate scandal, when Johnson and other government officials were found to have broken their own COVID-19 lockdown rules. Authorities in Chittagong, Bangladesh, struggle to determine the cause of a devastating fire that killed at least 49 people, including 9 firefighters. Emergency personnel say more than 100 others were also injured. Officials are concerned over the safety of workers in Bangladesh's industrial sector.
যাদেরকে সন্তানের মতো দেখেছি, যাদেরকে নিয়ে কাজ করেছি, এই ভাইদেরকে নিয়ে মানে কাঁধে করে আনা যে কত কষ্টকর, এটা এখানে উপলব্ধি করেছি। এর চেয়ে আমার মনে হয় পৃথিবীতে কষ্টের কোনো এর চেয়ে দুঃখের, এর চেয়ে কষ্টের আর কিছু হতে পারে না।
Family and Ukrainian military gathered to bury an officer who was killed while fighting in the Luhansk region of Ukraine. Colonel Alexander Makachek was killed by Russian artillery. He leaves behind his wife and 2 daughters.
В один із моментів, коли почався обстріл, він з групою сховався в укритті. Але він в нього була група, 4 чоловіка з ним. Він сказав сховатися в бліндаж, а сам сховався в інший бліндаж. І, на жаль, в цей бліндаж було пряме попадання артилерійського снаряду. І ударною волною його винесло, і він загинув.
Ukraine's president says the country is losing up to 100 soldiers per day in fighting against Russian forces. The war with Russia is now over 100 days old. Samaritan's Purse is working through a network of over 2,000 partner churches in Ukraine to provide food, medicine, and other critical relief items to displaced people all over the country. We have more now in this report.
My name's Ken Isaacs, and I'm speaking to you today from Bucha, Ukraine. This area is in the northern part of Ukraine, and it is the area that was famously notarized across the media for columns of Russian armored vehicles that were destroyed. I was here about a month ago, right after the town was liberated, and the street behind me at that time was full of destroyed tanks and armored personnel carriers and even corpses in the road. Samaritan's Purse is helping people all across Ukraine. We're helping without regard for anything except we love them in Jesus' name, and we want to show that. We are working through a network of partner churches, over 2,000 across the country, to distribute food, to provide medicine, to keep fuel going. And God has allowed us to do all of this through many, many years of partnership here in Ukraine, starting back with Operation Christmas Child over 20 years ago. When disasters happen in the world, the DNA, the heart of Samaritan's Purse, is to run to the disaster and to help people in the ditches of life. No matter where it is in the world, no matter what is going on, we want to be there and to be there in the name of Jesus Christ. That is what we're doing in Ukraine now. Thank you for your prayers. Thank you for your support. Much is needed here, but God is providing us with everything that we need, and we want to be good stewards of it. Thank you for being a partner with us in this ministry in Ukraine.
It is so wonderful to see the great work that Christian organizations are doing around the world, isn't it? Well, it's wonderful that we were able to enjoy some liquid sunshine here in southwestern Alberta. Our farmers and ranchers desperately need the moisture, and that liquid sunshine will be remaining for the short term. Complete weather details are on deck. We enjoyed some much-needed moisture in many parts of southwestern Alberta once again today. Tonight, expect more rain to develop with a low near 9 degrees. Tomorrow, more rain is expected with a high of 15. The rain cloud should leave us on Wednesday with the mercury climbing to 23. Even warmer under a mainly clear sky on Thursday with a high near 24. The clouds should return on Friday, and we should get up to 25 degrees. A hot Saturday is shaping up so far. Expect a few clouds with a high near 27. Sunday cooling off slightly to 22 degrees. Checking the almanac, the average high for this time of year is 21 with an average low of 8. The record high was 32 degrees set back in 1972, and the record low was 0 back in 1951. The sun rose at 5:26 and set at 9:35. Let's see how Tuesday is shaping up across the country now. Expect a mainly cloudy day with a high of 19 in Victoria, mainly sunny and 20 degrees for Vancouver. A mixture of sun and cloud and 21 for Edmonton. A slight chance of showers developing and 14 for Calgary on Tuesday. Cloudy and 20 degrees for Regina. Mainly sunny and 22 for Saskatoon. Just a few clouds and 21 is on tap for Winnipeg. In the central part of the country, expect rain and 19 for Toronto. A few showers and 25 for Ottawa. Rain and 26 degrees for Montreal. In Atlantic Canada, partly cloudy and 25 for Fredericton. Mainly sunny and 24 degrees in Halifax. Just a few clouds and 21 for Charlottetown. And in St. John's, Newfoundland, expect a mixture of sun and cloud and a high of only 11 degrees on Tuesday. The trial of a federal public servant accused of leaking cabinet secrets about a shipbuilding project began today. Matthew Machette is charged with break of trust in February of 2019 for allegedly leaking secret cabinet documents about a contract between Ottawa and the Chantier Davie shipyard in Quebec in November of 2015. That is when the Liberal government decided to hold off finalizing a contract with the company to lease a temporary supply ship for the Navy, a deal they later approved. Machette was suspended from his job in the Federal Procurement Department in 2018. His lawyer said his client intends to plead not guilty. His trial by judge and jury is expected to run for several weeks. Shares on Twitter tumbled more than 5% after Elon Musk threatened to end his $44 billion U.S. agreement to buy the social media company. Lawyers for Tesla have accused Twitter of refusing to give Musk information about its spam bot accounts, which they say is a material breach of Twitter's obligations under the merger agreement. Musk has repeatedly asked for the information since May the 9th so he could evaluate how many of the company's 229 million accounts are fake. If he walks away from the Twitter deal, Musk could be on the hook for a $1 billion breakup fee. The company best known for developing the Taser says it is halting plans to develop a Taser-equipped drone. The decision by Axon comes as a majority of its ethics board resigned over the project. Axon CEO Rick Smith says the announcement about the drone was designed to initiate a conversation about a potential solution after 19 children and 2 adults were killed at a mass shooting at an elementary school in Uvalde, Texas. Now, here's a look at today's markets. The TSX was up 28 points on the day to finish at 20,819. The Dow was up 16 points to 32,915. The S&P 500 was up 12 points to 4121, and the Nasdaq was up 48 on the day to 12,061. West Texas Intermediate Oil was up 55 cents to $119.42 US per barrel. Natural gas was up 85 cents to $9.37 US. Gold was up 14 cents to $18.4157 US an ounce, and silver was up 7 cents to $22.14 US an ounce. Feed wheat is at $16.19 per bushel, barley's at $10.16, canola's at $25.56, and corn is at $12.06 per bushel. Live cattle were down 78 cents to $132.83. Feeder cattle August contract was down $1.90 to $171.98, and lean hogs were down 98 cents to $109.23. The Canadian dollar was up slightly over the past 24 hours to 79.50 US. Recapping one of our top stories, Lethbridge East MLA and UCP caucus chair Nathan Neudorf announced on Monday that he will not be seeking the party's leadership. So far, 4 candidates have put their names forward to become the next premier and party leader. They are former UCP Finance Minister Travis Taves, former leaders of the Alberta Wildrose Party Brian Jean and Daniel Smith, and independent MLA Todd Loewen. You know, when it comes to policies many governments are putting forward to tackle the climate crisis, a number of them are not meeting those targets. That's according to Robert Lyman, who's an energy and environment public policy consultant. Lyman will have details for us in an exclusive interview with BCN's Jeanette Rocher in just a moment.
Well, the federal government recently laid out its ambitious greenhouse gas emissions plan, which is a sector-by-sector approach for Canada to reach its new climate target of cutting emissions by 40% below the 2005 levels by 2030 and net zero emissions by 2050. Now, our guest today is well-versed in the issues of the economy and the environment. Robert Lyman has spent over 4 decades mainly for the Canadian federal government working as an economist, manager, and a consultant. Through his career, Robert worked on a broad range of energy and environment public policy issues, and he's written and presented extensively on the subject. He joins us today from Ottawa. Robert Lyman, welcome to Bridge City News. So great to have you on today.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be able to speak with you.
Thank you. Okay, so Robert, there's been an overwhelming amount of information about the environment and the drastic changes some say are needed. So now some, of course, believe that you are the person to speak to about where the economy and environmental policy meet. So I guess we want to first ask you that million-dollar question. In your opinion, in your expert opinion, will sharply reducing Canada's use of hydrocarbons reduce global temperatures by any meaningful amount?
Well, that is absolutely the key question. And to start with the answer, I guess I have to remind people that climate change is a global issue. It concerns the emissions that take place from all the countries in the world, and it affects the world's environment. Canada emits about 1.6% of the greenhouse gas emissions annually emitted. So right off the bat, you see that we're a very, very small part of the emissions issue. But the real question is, to what extent would reducing emissions of greenhouse gases in Canada or eliminating them altogether have any impact on the growth of concentrations of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere? According to the best estimates available now by Professor Ross McKittrick of Guelph University, if we completely eliminated all of our greenhouse gas emissions tomorrow, it would only reduce the concentrations of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere by about 3 parts per million. So that's negligible. There would be no possible way that you could even measure the effect of reducing Canada's emissions in terms of either the greenhouse gas trends or temperatures.
Wow, that's kind of fascinating. So why do you think that governments like Canada continue to pursue this idea then of reducing hydrocarbon?
Well, many people have been convinced, I guess, by what they've seen of the scientific studies that have been done by the United Nations and by the work that's been done through a number of different international conferences, that you can make a difference, if you will. And I won't get into the scientific issues. As you noted, I'm primarily an expert in policy and economics. One of the central issues concerns whether, even if the science that gives rise to concerns were valid, what is the prospect that the world's governments will be able to agree to a plan to significantly reduce greenhouse gas emissions? They've been meeting to try to do that since 1990. So it's over 30 years now. And they have set a series of targets, but as a result of over 30 years of experience, the greenhouse gas emissions in the world have increased by 60% over that period of time, not decreased. 2/3 of the world's emissions now come from the developing countries, the countries in Asia predominantly. Those emissions are growing rapidly. By far, most of the emissions that are occurring in the world are occurring as a result of population and economic growth in Asia. So none of the targets that have been set by those international conferences have ever been met. Apart from a few European countries, no country in the world has ever met its greenhouse gas emission reduction targets. People still keep saying that they're committed to these goals, but the reality is that that's not what's happening in the world.
Wow. And of course, we know that for many years now, the Canadian government's been providing subsidies for green energy. So would you say that these subsidies have been a net profit or a loss for the Canadian economy and the taxpayer?
Well, the subsidies is always a very interesting question, because many people kind of in principle think of subsidies from government or from taxpayers to industry as a bad thing. The renewable energy industries, which include largely wind and solar energy and biomass energy that's used for power generation, receive, in fact, over 23 different kinds of subsidies or market advantages in Canada from all levels of government. There's so many of these different programs that there isn't even a proper an analysis of them. No one has ever looked at what the costs and benefits are. And it's mostly what we know about is what they cost in terms of the effects on electricity consumers and the effects on the taxpayer. In Ontario, which is the province that has gone the farthest in terms of implementing rate increases and guaranteeing contracts for renewable energy, the cost of these programs is about $4 billion a year, above what they would otherwise have paid. we know a lot more about the subsidies that are being paid to renewable energy projects in the United States because of the work that's been done there. And in the United States, I have some figures here, so I'll just quote them for you. The amount that has been devoted is over $375 billion in subsidies to renewable energy in the United States. In fact, I mean, renewable energy provides about 4% of US electricity production, but it takes over half of the subsidies that are paid to energy sources of all kinds.
Wow.
And the
Not a lot of return on investment there when you look at it
no,
that
there's
way.
not a lot of return on investment. And so, I mean, that's a very significant issue for Canadians in provinces that have not yet seen these subsidies increase, because they will.
Yeah, I'm in southern Alberta, and of course, where I am, we have lots of windmills, right? So, can you tell us maybe the long-term net gain or cost of windmills according to their expected lifespan?
Well, the average windmill has a life of about an operating life of about 20 years, there, of course, the most important thing that one needs to know about windmills, as well as solar energy, is that it's an intermittent energy source. That is to say, it only produces energy when the wind is blowing. And typically across Canada, and I'm sure in Alberta as well, the windmills only produce energy somewhere between 30 and 50% of the time. And there are extended periods of time when they're not producing at all because the wind just isn't blowing. The effect of that is that they have to have backup sources of supply for when they're not producing. And typically, it's natural gas-fired generation that is used as backup supply. And what that, in effect, does is means that the utility has to have a double system. It pays for the windmills, and then it has to pay for the natural gas or other backup energy source.
That makes sense.
Over time, especially if we follow the proposals for decarbonization of the Canadian economy, governments will try to eliminate the natural gas backups, and we'll be left reliant on batteries, which are even more expensive.
Isn't that fascinating? Wow. I mean, I know the wind blows a lot in southern Alberta, but you're kind of making it sound like there's an extra cost to that. Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about oil and gas production in Canada. So what is, in your opinion, what would be the economic benefit to Canadians from Canadian oil and gas production? It does seem like they're really trying to sort of squash that.
Well, oil and gas is one of the most important resource industries in Canada, if not the most important resource industry in Canada. In 2019, oil and gas produced over $122 billion in export revenues for Canada. It's more important than our exports of automobiles, which tend to get a lot more attention. But it's not just exports. It represents about 5.3% of our gross domestic product as well. And of course, much higher in the case of Alberta. In fact, in Alberta, the current estimate of the annual income is about $60 billion from oil and gas. Very, very significant for the revenues to the Alberta government and for the spin-off effects that it has on employment and investment in the province.
Yeah. In your opinion, is there any other natural resource that could even come close to providing the same level of economic benefit as oil and gas?
No, well, there isn't. I mean, if you look at the contributions that are made to the resource industries to Canada's economy, oil and gas stands first. The closest one that comes after it is mining, and mining's share is about half that of oil and gas.
Can you maybe quantify the cost to Canadians of the pipelines not being built and having to import all that foreign oil?
over the course of the last decade, largely as a result of actions taken by the federal government at the regulatory level, there have been a number of pipelines that have been canceled. They had many of them went through 4 or 5 or sometimes 6 years of regulatory review, only to be canceled as a result of that. The one that is particularly well known is the Northern Gateway Pipeline, which would have delivered oil to the British Columbia coast and exported it to Asia after that. And then the Northern Gateway Pipeline would have been built for about $8 billion, and that was canceled. The Energy East Pipeline was an oil pipeline that would have gone to the other coast. It would have taken oil from Alberta to the East Coast, and from there, it would have been exported either to Atlantic markets, either in the United States or Europe or elsewhere in the world. When that was canceled, there was an $8 billion loss in capital expenditures. And that doesn't include the losses that have occurred as a result of the failure to construct liquefied natural gas terminals on the British Columbia coast. There's been 3 major LNG terminals that have been canceled, largely as a result of a failure to deal with the regulatory constraints or to deal with some of the Aboriginal issues that have been concerned. In terms of the revenue that Canadian oil and gas producers have lost as a result of not having market access.
I was just going to ask you that, because I mean, that $8 billion mark it's a huge number, but then what would that return on investment have been?
Well, it's kind of just the return from the sale alone. It was over the period from 2014 to 2018 alone, the discounts that Alberta producers had to absorb resulted in a loss of $40 billion. I mean, that's you and I can't even imagine what $1 billion looks like.
It's unfathomable.
Yeah, exactly. It's striking and it's tragic, and the reality is that until we start to build more energy infrastructure, we're not going to solve these problems. You made a reference there to the fact that we import oil into Eastern Canada, and that has sometimes given rise to the suggestion that we need to build a pipeline to Eastern Canada to meet those needs. The reason we haven't done that in the past is that the refineries in Eastern Canada are designed and equipped to handle lighter oils than are produced in Alberta. And so it's been much less expensive for them to import them. And frankly, from the perspective of Alberta producers, they get a higher netback on their sales of their oil to the United States because the transportation costs are lower than they would be if they had to sell their oil all the way to the East Coast.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So that's kind of the fundamental economics that underlie that trade situation.
Wow, I feel like we're only scratching the surface here, and we're running out of time. We're going to have you back for a part 2 of this.
Be glad to.
That was Robert Lyman. He spent over 4 decades mainly for the Canadian federal government working as an economist, manager, and consultant. Health and wholeness is a quest for many. People have different thoughts on supplements, doctors, and healthcare. So what role should nutrition play in our public healthcare system, and what role should personal responsibility play in the ways of our health? Joining me to discuss health, lifestyle, and nutrition is Chris Robinson from Lethbridge's own Purple Carrot. Chris, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. Okay, so Chris, you're a nutritional consultant, right? And you've been a longtime entrepreneur in Lethbridge, and your store has just recently moved, or I guess expanded is probably a better way to say that. So maybe just give us a quick little backstory on why you moved.
We opened just over 5 years ago, and we started really little, and we didn't expect to grow so quickly. We have a lovely, loyal customer base here, and there's so many wonderful local companies, and we found we outgrew our space really, really quickly. So we yeah, we were full. We had no room in our store, and so we needed to expand. So we moved down the street to the old Shots building, and now we have 3 times the space. So
Yeah, it's interesting. I know we were talking a little bit beforehand about kind of like the need for these healthcare foods or health like nutritional foods now, these stores that carry these kind of products and stuff. So does that kind of tell you a little bit about the choices that people in Southern Alberta are making?
yeah, for sure. I mean, you mentioned earlier that, personal responsibility. We all need to be responsible for our own health, and our choices we make have a huge impact on our health. What foods we put in, the air we breathe, the people we spend time with, and how much time we get out in the sun. There's what we believe, so many things like that, they actually affect our body. And so there's this, we want to provide a place where we can provide those things that people need to feel better. And when we take time to take care of ourselves, our health is better. We want to be a part of that for other people.
Now, have you always been into health and nutrition?
Absolutely. I grew up in the coast. My parents are super healthy hippies, tie-dye, jean shorts, that sort of thing. We grew wheatgrass in our dining room growing up. My doctor, 30 years ago was prescribing vitamins. I saw a chiropractor years ago before it was cool. We grew all our veggies. And for me, it was a part of how I grew up. It's a part of who I am. The smell of a health food store is home to me.
So then when you came from the coast to Southern Alberta, did you notice there was a huge gap in the market? And is that why you started your business?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I moved here just over 15 years ago, and I found I was having to go everywhere. And then when I started my nutritional consulting business, I was sending my clients everywhere. And so my business partner, Kathy, and she was my receptionist at the time. We were like, man, what could we do? And we're like, let's open our own store of all of our favorite things. And then that way we have a one central spot, for us to go to, but for the people who were, supporting and what have you, that they have somewhere to go to as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So as a nutritional consultant, what changes have you noticed in the local population, let's say like in relation to diet?
I think people are looking to do better. We've noticed in the last few years, oh shoot, there's some stuff going around that could affect our health. And so people are thinking about that. What can I do to make myself healthier? And so we have people coming in, what can I do to support my immune system? What can I do to prevent illness? What can I do this winter? What have you? How do I support these systems in my body? And so we're seeing a lot more of that than we were 2 years ago. A lot more questions on immune support and how do I be healthier? How can I ward off infections?
So what do you tell them? How do you ward off infections?
Well, I think the biggest thing is take care of your body. We need to eat good nutrient dense foods. The more nutrients we get and the more we eat for a reason. We eat to get nutrients. So we need to make sure we're eating nutrient dense food. We're eating lots of vegetables. We're eating fruit. We're eating good quality foods, and we're not eating too much sugar. I mean, sugar in particular, if you can cut down or cut out sugar, that's the best thing you can do for your immune system. So I always tell people, get in lots of good and try not to get in too much bad.
Okay, there you go. That's great advice. I have a real problem with sugar myself. I'm a sugar
well, it's so addictive. It's more addictive, they say, than cocaine. Like,
oh my goodness,
it's bad, and it's so common. And young kids all the way up to our seniors.
Yeah.
It's addictive and it tastes delicious.
I'm in trouble.
But there's so many really good healthy foods that are delicious too, and I think that's something people miss. We don't realize that you can eat healthy, and it doesn't have to be like you're eating cardboard every day. You can eat really delicious, amazing, healthy foods, and they taste good, and they're good for you.
So now, what about food sensitivities? This is a huge topic that's come up lately over the past more recent years. I know I myself have certain food sensitivities. So, I know there's many ideas about the sources and causes, but can you maybe give us an example about how you could suggest a path to managing these food sensitivities?
Yeah, and that's actually the basis of my practice. I predominantly deal in food sensitivities and intolerances. And there's a variety of theories as to why this would happen. And in my opinion, in my experience, I think it's a perfect storm of a bunch of things. So stress will affect that. chemical exposure. Chemical is probably not the appropriate word, but toxin exposure, pesticide exposure. Our bodies have systems in place to naturally encourage elimination of toxins, but we're so bombarded by what we put in our hair, what we put on our skin, what's sprayed on our food, what's painted on our walls. I mean, we're exposed to so many toxins. We're adjusting how we're growing our food. We're doing weird things to our food. When you look at the ingredients, you go to the store and you look at that list of ingredients on there, we don't know what half of them are. So we're looking at preservatives and what have you. Like there's so much imbalance when we're constantly, bombarding ourselves with antibiotics and what have you. We deplete our good bacteria. And there's so much research on the microbiome now and our good bacteria. So when our microbiome is out of balance, that's a factor. So there's so many things that play in. And so if we're looking at improving or trying to ward off or trying to avoid food sensitivities, it's eat a variety of different foods. So don't eat the same thing every day. That's key. So overconsumption is another big cause of sensitivity. If you're eating the same thing every day for breakfast or every day for breakfast, lunch, and supper, what have you, your body can become overwhelmed with that. So eat a variety of foods. Again, eat nutrient-dense food. Eat foods where you know where that food came from. Where does an apple come from? A tree? Where doesn't it come from? We know where certain foods come from. So eat real foods. Do you know where FD&C yellow came from, or disodium guanylate, or propylene glycol, or those weird things that are in our food? We shouldn't be eating those things. So eat real foods. Eat less sugar again, and affect your immune system. And de-stress is huge. But there's a lot of things. Reduce your toxin exposure. That's really important.
So would you say then, like, eating organic is maybe the way to go?
I'm a fan of eating organic for sure. I try and eat as much organic as possible. To me, it just makes sense. If there's less spray on there, there's less things that my body has to deal with. So the cleaner food that I can eat, the less work my detoxification pathways have to do, the less work my liver has to do, the less work my kidneys have to do, and that's good for me. So that's what I want. So like I said, less toxin exposure. And if one of the ways I can reduce toxins is by making sure they're not on my food, I do that for sure.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So would you say that food sensitivities are the same as allergies, or are they maybe two different things?
No, they're different. So like a true allergy, like a peanut allergy, is different than a food sensitivity or a food intolerance. And so depending on what practitioner you're seeing, so if you're seeing a doctor for allergies, they'll look for a particular antibody in your blood, or you can see a naturopath for a different blood work and they'll look for a different antibody, and that would be a food sensitivity or an intolerance. It's typically where we're not seeing something in the blood, but you're like, I know when I eat gluten, I feel crummy, but maybe your doctor says there's no allergy, or your naturopath says there's no sensitivity, but there's something going on there. And usually those intolerances are usually more when you're just not breaking down that food properly. So lack of enzymes, which would be another cause of food intolerances. We're just not breaking down our food properly.
Like, I guess, like how you're living, a lifestyle, even like a healthy home, for example. How does a home relate to allergies with food sensitivities? Is there a relationship there?
Oh, it's huge. For sure. I mean, and it's sort of what came first, the chicken or the egg. So if we have food sensitivities, we're going to be more likely to be reactive to other things in our environment. If we're reactive to things in our environment, that can affect us having more food sensitivities. And so again, when we look at our air fresheners and our hairspray and our cleaning supplies. And there's some really alarming and compelling information about our cleaners we use in our house, about I never like to name names, but the Febrezes or the Glade plugins and what have you, and the toxicity that those cause.
Yeah,
and
those typical ones that you pick up at the grocery store or wherever, right?
Yeah, your body has to deal with that. Everything you breathe in, everything that touches your skin, everything that you're consuming, your body has to deal with that. Your liver has to deal with that. Your kidneys have to break that down. We have to try and get rid of that. And a lot of the times we just can't keep up. We can't keep up to the toxic load we're exposed to. We should be able to. Our body should be able to do it on its own, but we can't. And so eliminating those toxins in our house are huge. And there's some really incredible studies, and sorry, I should have had one off the top of my head and I don't, but the correlation between allergies and toxins in the home and and how many health problems they cause.
That's interesting. So, I mean, we want to have a clean home, obviously. So what is the alternative then if you don't want to break out that Mr. Clean or whatever? I've heard that there's like organic products out there. Is that the way to go?
Yeah, there's lots of cleaner products out there. I mean, really, in all honesty, most of those products make the job easier. They're going to melt away the scrubbing bubbles, that sort of thing. So it's elbow grease. Elbow grease is your biggest alternative. And so, vinegars and baking sodas, super simple, super cheap. They work well. You just got to work a little harder for that. But there are a lot of products out there. We carry all sorts of natural cleaners and what have you that work really well, and they smell good. And they smell good from essential oils that are in there. So there's no toxic chemicals or what have you. So there's a lot of products that are out there, but you can use really simple things that you probably already have in your home that work really well, so long as you're willing to put a little muscle into it.
Yeah, no, interesting. I'm going to give that a try. Maybe talk about the relationship between food choice and our emotional well-being, because we often think physical or physiological when it comes to food, but it can affect our moods and our emotions as well, and just everything mentally, right?
Oh, for sure. I mean, they talk about in natural medicine or in the natural health industry, the gut-brain connection, and it sort of goes both ways. So if your guts are unhappy, you have an imbalance in your microbiome, there's too many bad guys, not enough good guys, that can affect your mental well-being, and vice versa. So if you're stressed, if your cortisol levels are high and you're running ragged and what have you, that's going to affect that. And so we'll see that, oh, I got butterflies in my tummy, or, I'm nervous. So people will sometimes have to run to the washroom if they're nervous. And so it goes both ways. And so when we have a healthy diet, and we have a healthy gut, that can affect our mental well-being. And when we work hard at having a happy mental well-being, and we're doing the things we need to do, we're having self-care, we're getting outside, maybe you're meditating or praying or doing whatever you do to calm yourself, that will have a positive impact on your digestive system and therefore the rest of your health as well. So it goes both ways.
Mm-hmm. Do you have maybe an example of a really dramatic change in one of your clients who maybe switched their lifestyle like this, maybe switched to these organic products or switched to organic foods instead? What kind of a difference did it make in them?
Oh God, I have hundreds of stories. One of my favorites is one more recently. It was a customer came into the store, and I knew her a couple of different ways. So she wasn't actually my client, but she came in the store and she's like, I'm so inflamed, my joints hurt, my feet hurt, I'm having hot flashes all night, I feel terrible. And I was like, okay. So I suggested that she follow an anti-inflammatory diet. So basically an anti-inflammatory diet is we take out foods that cause inflammation. So I find dairy, gluten, corn, sugar are the big ones. So I suggested she pull out those foods and increase her vegetables. And so then a week later, she emailed me and she's like, oh my gosh, this is so hard. This is terrible. I just want to eat marshmallows and s'mores and I go camping.
That would have been the hardest week of my life to cut out. Like,
Yeah,
I
so
mean, I love popcorn. So like you have to eliminate corn and, of course, the carbs, the gluten, the sugar.
Yeah. And so it was a lot. And so she was freaking out. I said, you can do this. Right now it's hard, but this is that emotional eating. You want to crave those foods, make you temporarily feel good. So stick through it. It's going to get easier, I promise. And then a week, maybe 2 weeks later, I see her walk in the store and she's walking towards me with this look on her face. And I was like, oh, no, she's going to be so mad. And she was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe how good I feel. She's like, my joint pain is gone. I feel so amazing. I'm not having hot flashes tonight. She's like, I feel so good. I can't even believe the difference. And then that's the way she just continues to eat, because she feels so good that way, that she just, it's not worth it to eat the s'mores or the McDonald's or whatever it is she wanted to eat before. And that's the thing, it's hard at first, and we're emotional creatures. We emotionally eat. So when you make a dietary change to start, it's difficult. But if you can get past that and then you start seeing the benefits from it, it's so much easier to stick to it. And then it's worth it.
Yeah, what a great example that is. I love that. It's an actual real life example. And it just goes to show you don't necessarily need those prescriptions. Sometimes it's just eliminating certain things that we're just consuming a lot of. That's amazing.
Yeah. And again, it's our food. Our food Your food is your foundation for your health. We have to start with food if we want to be healthy. And vitamins and supplements and herbs, man, they have a place. And again, I could tell you a million stories about those where like I'm blown away at the results. But you can take the best vitamin in the world or the best this in the world or what have you. If you don't have that foundation in place, if eating well and drinking lots of water, nothing's going to improve. So we want to start with that foundation of a good diet.
Yeah, fantastic advice. Chris, thank you so much. It looks like we are out of time, but we appreciate you coming on today and educating us like this.
My pleasure. It's my favorite thing to talk about.
That's great. Chris Robinson is the owner of Lethbridge's own Purple Carrot and a nutritional consultant. We're so glad to have her on today. I'm Jeanette Roche on behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News. Thanks for watching.